guys, so I'm back for our read aloud from Lena Stories The Wishing Spell. Sorry I missed doing it yesterday. We had our caravan parade for everybody, so I was down there and didn't get in the house until late, and by then I knew it wouldn't get loaded and I was tired. So, sorry about that, but here is chapter 5 from the Mouth of a Frog. And if you remember last time, Alex has fallen into the book, right? And that's where we left off at that cliffhanger. I left you hanging at a cliffhanger. Sorry. All right. From the Mouth of a Frog. It's going to be what it'll be. All right. Alex was no longer in her bedroom. She was falling into a world of light. She fell farther and farther and faster and faster. She was dizzy and scared. She screamed out for help, but couldn't hear her own voice. Would she ever stop falling? What? Was she going to die? Was she dead? She wondered if she would ever see her family again. She could hear birds chirping and trees blowing in the wind. The noise seemed to get closer and closer, but she just kept falling and falling, not knowing where she was falling to. Ouch! Alex said, hitting the ground. When we say ouch, something like that, what's that an example of? What type of figure of language? Yeah, it's onomatopoeia, right? It's a fun word. Her impact was hard enough to hurt, but not hard enough to seriously injure her. Had it not been for the rough landing, she would have thought for sure she was dreaming. Alex quickly got to her feet. She felt her pulse to make sure her heart was still working. She was still alive, from what she could tell. She was so thankful to have finally stopped falling. But where exactly had she fallen to? She was standing on a dirt path in the middle of thick forest. They were tall, and the trees were tall and dark, with bright green moss covering their trunks. The sun's rays shined through a light mist. Birds squawked from high in trees, and if she listened closely enough, she could hear a tiny stream in the distance. Alex spun around, looking in all directions. Her breath increased as she took a look at her new surrounding. Was she overreacting, or not reacting enough to what had just happened? And what exactly had just happened? She looked up to see if there was an opening that she had fallen through, hoping to see some sort of window into her bedroom. But all she saw were tree branches and the sky above her. Where am I? She asked herself. Ah! As if he had fallen right out of thin air. Connor landed hard on the ground. So now we got Connor in the book. He landed beside his sister. He was pale and screaming, and his limbs were stretched out in all directions. Am I alive? Am I dying? Am I dead? He asked from the ground, with his eyes tightly closed. You're alive, Alex told him. She had never been so happy to see him. Alex, is that you? Connor asked. He slowly opened his eyes, one at a time, and looked around. Where are we? He asked as she helped him to his feet. It looks like some kind of forest, she said. It was unlike any forest they'd ever seen in real life, at least. The colors were so vivid and the air was so crisp. It was as if they had fallen into a painting Alex was positive she had seen before. Where do you think she would have seen that painting before? I fell into the book. So where would she have seen that painting? Maybe one of the illustrations? Yeah, good. Look, Connor said, pointing at the ground. All of our pencils. Remember, she kept dropping pencils into the book. The path was littered with pencils. Alex had been dropping into the book all week. She also found her school bag and a few of her dirty socks in the middle of the mess. But where were all the books she had dropped into the land of stories? So this is where they all went, Alex said. But where is here? Connor asked. How far away from home are we? Alex couldn't answer him. She was starting to become just as worried as he was. They were worse than lost. This is all your fault, Alex, he said. My fault? Alex yelled. We wouldn't be here if you hadn't just knocked on my door instead of... Let me try that again. We wouldn't be here if you had just knocked on my door instead of barging in like the house was on fire. I knew you were planning this, Connor said. I had to stop you. I wasn't planning on going into the book. I was just testing it out, Alex exclaimed. You didn't have to follow me here. Oh, sure. Was I just supposed to leave you in a book by yourself? He exclaimed. What was I supposed to tell Mom when she got home? Hey, Mom, I hope you had a good day at work. Alex fell through a book. By the way, what's for dinner? Give me a break. Connor began jumping upward as high as he could. What are you doing? Alex asked. We fell from somewhere up here. There's got to be a way back, he said, but all his jumps were pointless. So he was choppy because he was jumping up and down. And I knew to read it like that because the author put periods in between each word, so I knew to stop. Connor eventually tired himself out and took a seat on the ground against a tree trunk. What if we were transported to another country or something? Connor asked. His forehead became more wrinkled, and the further he thought about it, what if it took us to Canada or Mongolia or somewhere? How long is it going to take for Mom or somebody to find us? Suddenly, the ground started shaking. A powerful rumbling had consumed the forest. The branches of the trees shook. The small rocks on the ground began jumping as something massive moved closer toward them. What's happening now? Connor yelled. Let's take cover, Alex said. She grabbed her bag, and the twins ran off of the path and into the forest a little ways and took refuge behind a particularly wide tree. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A huge cavalcade of soldiers on white horses rode past them. Their armor was clean and shiny. They carried green and silver shields with large red apples painted on them and waved flags of the same design. Red apples. Does that remind you of anybody? Alex, did we go back in time? Connor anxiously asked his sister. This looks like something straight out of medieval times. So he's thinking like a complete, I know we had a setting change, but he's thinking like a time part of a setting change too, like back in time. That would be crazy, wouldn't it? The pencils were obliterated under the horses' hooves. The soldiers were moving at such a fast and forceful pace that none of them even noticed the awestruck twins peeking out from behind the tree. Alex was fixated on their shields. A red apple was such an odd thing to be displayed on a shield, but there was something familiar about it. She just couldn't put her finger on it. Can you put your finger on it? The rumbling slowly faded away as the soldiers disappeared down the dirt path. The twin boys stayed behind the tree for a few minutes, making sure... What did I say, the twin boys? The twins both stayed behind the tree for a few moments, making sure the coast was clear. I don't know about you, but I've had about as much excitement as I can handle for one day, Connor told Alex. A poster pinned to a nearby tree caught Alex's eye. She walked over to it, pulled it off of the tree for further inspection. It was old, with faded writing, and a picture of a disgruntled-looking little girl with curly blonde hair was in the center. The poster read, Wanted, dead or alive, Goldilocks, for burglary, thievery, and running from the law. Do you remember Goldilocks' story? What did Goldilocks steal? The porridge. Goldilocks and the Three Bears, yeah, she stole their porridge. Burglary and thievery. Burglary is like when you break into somebody's house. Did she break into the bear's house? Yeah. And running from the law. So do you think right now maybe they can't find her, they can't catch her? Alex's face went white, and she stopped breathing for a moment. She had realized where they were. No wonder the trees had been so recognizable. She had seen the pictures of them so many times growing up. The book had taken them to the exact place she hoped. Guys, where are they? They fell into the land of stories, right? Yeah. Is it possible? She asked herself. The wheels in her head had never spun as fast as they were now. Is what possible? Connor asked. Do you know where we are? I think so, Alex told him. Where? Connor asked, fearing the answer. Connor, we went into the book, she explained, but he wasn't following her. I think we're actually in the land of stories. She handed him the wanted poster and he read it. His eyes grew as wide as a lemur's. They're comparing his eyes using like or as to a lemur's eyes. So what part of speech is that? What type of figurative language? Yeah, it's a simile. No, this cannot be happening. This is crazy, he said, shaking his head. He handed the poster back to his sister as if they were infected with rabies. He couldn't believe what she was saying. He didn't want to believe what she was saying. Are you telling me we're in the fairy tale world? I'd recognize this forest anywhere. It's straight out of Grandma's book, Alex said with an unplanned smile. But it makes perfect sense. Where else would it have taken us? We just fell into a book. Nothing makes sense, Connor said. So, are we stuck here or what? How do we get home? I don't have all of your answers, Connor, Alex said. Don't forget, all of this just happened to me, too. Connor began pacing around the trees with his hands on his hips. I can't believe I ditched detention and wound up in another dimension, he said. Alex was rather grateful her brother had come after her. They had lived together all of their lives and had been in the same classroom since kindergarten. She didn't know if she could handle being in a different dimension by herself. I hope you're happy, Alex, Connor said. I told you we should have thrown the book into the creek. Enough with the blaming, Alex said. It doesn't matter how we got here. The point is, we're here now. What matters is finding someone who can help us get home. Excuse me, may I help you? A proper voice behind the twins said. They jolted at the sound of another voice beside their own. They turned around to see where it had come from, and once they saw, they both wished they hadn't. Standing behind Alex and Connor was what could best be described as a frogman. He was tall with a wide face, big glossy eyes, and shiny green skin. He wore a dapper three-piece suit and carried a large glass jar of lily pads. Forgive me for eavesdropping, but I'm rather good with directions if you need some, he said with a very wide smile. Alex and Connor were so petrified that they were paralyzed. What do you think that means, petrified? They were so petrified they were paralyzed so they couldn't move. Yeah, they were scared. Petrified is like scared, stiff. Think about like petrified wood. That's like when wood becomes like a fossil. It's a rock. So they're petrified. So scared they can't move. If they needed any more evidence that they were in the fairy tale world, this was their proof. You look awfully young to be in the forest by yourselves, the frogman said. Are you lost? Connor let out a high-pitched squeal that lasted much longer than it should have. Please don't eat us, he said, and he dropped to the ground in fetal position. You ever heard of fetal position? Where like your knees are in your chest like you're up in a ball. That's fetal position. The frogman looked down at him with a frown. Young man, I have no intention of eating you, he said. Is he always like this? The frogman asked Alex. Alex responded with a squeal almost identical to the one her brother had made. I know. Don't worry. I'm used to people screaming at me, the frogman told them. Get it out of your systems. The shock will only last a minute. We're sorry, Alex finally managed to say. It's just that where we're from, there aren't many, frog people. Sorry, that isn't politically correct term for what you are. Connor let out another high-pitched noise. It wasn't a scream this time, but it was embarrassing nonetheless. The frogman studied their faces and paid special attention to their clothes. Where exactly are you from? Pretty far from here, Alex said. The piercing set of wolf howls echoed through the forest. All three of them jumped at the sound. The frogman looked around the trees with fear in his big eyes. It's getting dark, the frogman said. We'd better get inside. Please, follow me home. It's just a few minutes' walk from here. Nice try, Connor said. The wolf howls echoed again. This time, they were much louder than the first. Wherever the wolves were, they were getting closer. I know that I look scary now, the Frogman said to the twins, but I am nothing compared to some of the creatures that will lurk around these woods at night. I promise I will not harm you. There was such concern in his eyes, it was hard not to trust him. The Frogman took off at a brisk walk deeper into the forest. Alex nudged Connor. We better follow him. Are you crazy? I'm not going home with a giant frog, Connor whispered to her. What do we have to lose? Alex asked. Besides our lives, Connor said. But despite his protests, he was dragged up by his sister and pulled in the direction where the Frogman was leading them. The twins hurried behind the Frogman for a good while. They zigzagged between trees and jumped over boulders and tree roots that stuck up from the ground. The deeper they went into the forest, the thicker the trees became. It got dark very quickly and was almost pitch black by the time they reached the Frogman's home. Alex and Connor stayed close together. With every step, they second-guessed if they made a smart choice, going with the strange creature. This way, he said. The Frogman brushed aside some dead vines growing over a large wooden door that was camouflaged. Ooh, that was one of our science words. Camouflage. What does that mean? Kind of like blended in or hidden, doesn't it? Yeah. You blend in so you can hide. So the door was camouflaged. Makes sense. Like he had it hidden so people wouldn't find his door. It was camouflaged into the side of a small hill. He pulled the door open and led the hesitant twins underground. They looked back and forth, making sure they hadn't been followed, before shutting the door behind him. It was very dark underground. Alex and Connor were so close that they could have been mistaken for Siamese twins. Forgive the mess. I wasn't expecting company. The man apologized and lit a lamp with a match. Alex and Connor didn't know what to expect of the Frogman's home, but what they were seeing definitely wasn't it. They were in a large room with dirt walls and a low dirt ceiling. Roots from the trees growing above them grew down like chandeliers. A cluster of big, cushy chairs and sofas, many of the cushions that had stuffing sticking out of them, sat in the center of the room and were angled to face a small fireplace. Nearby, cups and pots hung from hooks over a tiny kitchenette. To Alex's delight, there were books everywhere. Shelves of books lined the dirt walls. Piles of books were stacked on every available surface on the ground. It was as if the room were infested with literature. Connor, Alex whispered close to him, look around this place. It's like we're having our own Lucy and Mr. Tumnus moment. I'm not sure what fairy tale Lucy and Mr. Tumnus are from. Do you know? I don't. Connor looked around and saw what she meant. If he offers us Turkish delight, I don't care what you say. We're getting out of here, he whispered back. It's a little dirty, but it is cozy, the Frogman said. It's hard to find a landlord who will house a frog, so I did the best that I could with what I had. He placed a jar of lily pads on the mantel and immediately started a fire in his fireplace. He filled the tea kettle with water from a pitcher and placed it over the fire, and he took a seat in a big white chair closest to it. He crossed his legs and folded his hands neatly in his lap. He was one proper frog. Please, have a seat, the Frogman said, gesturing to his sofa in front of him. The twins reluctantly did as he asked. What does reluctantly mean? Yeah, they kind of did it like they were hesitant to do it. They didn't really want to do it, but they did it. The sofa was rather lumpy, so they had to shift around in their seats to get comfortable. What are you? Connor asked the frog. Connor, don't be rude, his sister said, elbowing him in the side. It is quite all right, the Frogman said with a complicated smile. I understand. My appearance takes some time to get used to. Even I haven't fully adapted to it yet. You mean you weren't always, a frog person? Alex asked as politely as she could. Heavens, no, the Frogman said. I was cursed years ago by a very aggressive witch. Why? Alex asked. She was fascinated by casually he said it. "To teach me a lesson, I suppose," the Frogman told her. "I used to be a very vain young man." Well, we've talked about vain before. Remember, we always sing, "You're so vain." And we talked about Vanity Smurf, always looking in the mirror. Okay, so what does vain mean? Yeah, you're full of yourself, right? You're overly confident, and it's not a good thing. It's got a negative connotation. The witch transformed my appearance so I would lose all of the things that I took for granted. His wide smile softly faded. It had obviously been a very long and painful experience for him, and he still had a sad sense of loss and longing about him. The twins had never seen a frog look so sad. "I can't even imagine what that must have been like," Alex said, beaming with sympathy. "Can we call you Froggy?" Connor asked with a small smirk. "Connor!" Alex reprimanded. What does that mean to reprimand? She just reprimanded him. "Connor!" Yeah, it's like to scold. "It is quite all right," the Frogman nodded, and his smile returned. "I have learned that the more people embrace their disadvantages, the less disadvantaged they become. Please, call me Froggy. I'd prefer it." Connor shrugged and smiled. "May I get you some lily pad tea?" Froggy asked the twins. "Do y'all want to drink lily pad tea?" What do you think it would taste like? I picture kind of like pond water, right? Drinking some pond water, maybe like a leafy taste to it. Does that sound delicious? And it's hot too, right? Do you hear that noise? That's Max in the litter box. It's gonna smell soon. My life quarantined with a cat. Both the twins nodded. They didn't want to appear rude, so they nodded and told him what? That they wanted lily pad tea. Froggy returned the tea kettle from the fire and hopped, literally, to the kitchenette and poured water into the 3 teacups. He opened a jar on the mantel and dropped a lily pad into each teacup and stirred. Do either of you take flies with your tea?" he asked, reaching for another jar on the mantel, this one filled with dead flies. "How many flies would you guys put in your tea?" 10? Ew, right? "No thanks," Connor said. "I'm trying to quit." I can't help but laugh at Connor's remarks sometimes. "Suit yourself," Froggy said, and dropped a few flies into his tea. He handed them each a teacup and reseated himself across from them. They stared down at it for a few moments before deciding that they'd at least pretend to drink it. "What are your names?" Froggy asked the twins. "I'm Alex, and this is my brother, Connor." A large and happy smile came to Froggy's face. "Are you, by chance, Alex Bailey?" Froggy asked, grinning from ear equivalent to ear equivalent. Yes." Alex was so shocked. How did this amphibian know who she was? "As in, this book belongs to Alex Bailey?" Froggy asked. He leaned over the side of the chair and pulled up a stack of books, opening to show where the phrase was written inside the book. "Those are my books," Alex said excitedly, recognizing the books she had dropped into the Land of Stories. "I was wondering what happened to them." "It was so peculiar," Froggy explained. "I was out collecting flies and walking down the path to the swamp when one just fell from the sky and landed on my head. I returned the next day and found several more in the same spot. It was the oddest thing that has ever happened to me." "You mean besides being turned into a frog, right?" Connor asked. "Because if I were you, that would be on the top of my list." "Ouch!" Alex elbowed her brother. Froggy ignored Connor and went on with his explanation. "As you can see from my shelves, I love to collect books, especially when I'm not expecting to," he said, "and these books were unlike any I had ever read. They described people and places I had never seen or heard of, and I thought I had seen it all. The authors wrote about such interesting places. Could you imagine a world without witches or trolls or giants? What imaginations!" Froggy chuckled at the thought of this. And the twins laughed along with the best fake laughs they could muster. Please keep them. I have duplicate copies at home, Alex told him. Froggy was delighted to hear this. This is a long chapter, guys. Connor cleared his throat. Speaking of home, I don't mean to interrupt this little book club, but we're very lost and we like to know where we are. Froggy's glossy eyes went back and forth between the twins, watching them closely. Oh, children, you wouldn't be here if you knew where you were, Froggy said. You're in the dwarf forests. He had expected some sort of worried reaction from the twins, but Alex and Connor just stared at him with very little expression. The dwarf forests? Alex asked. What are the dwarf forests? You have never heard of them? Froggy asked, completely appalled. The twins both shook their head. It is a very dangerous place, Froggy told them. It's the only designated area of land without a ruler or government. It's a kingdom where everyone is their own king. It used to be populated by dwarfs who would work in the mines, and now it's full of criminals and fugitives mostly. It's a place where people go when they don't want to be found. Knowing they had not only traveled into another world, but were in a very dangerous part of that world did nothing to help the twins' anxiety level. Are there other kingdoms? Alex asked. Froggy was stunned. However, he seemed to be enjoying their unfamiliarity. Of course, he said. There is the Northern Kingdom and the Sleeping Kingdom. Who do you think would be in charge of the Sleeping Kingdom? The Charming Kingdom. The Corner Kingdom. The Fairy Kingdom. The Red Riding Hood Kingdom. The Elf Empire. The Dwarf Forests. And the Troll and Goblin Territory. How could you possibly not know this? This was difficult for the twins to wrap their heads around. How big was this fairy tale world? Their puzzled faces inspired Froggy to hop out of his seat and cross to one of the bookshelves and return with a large rolled-up scroll. He handed it to the twins as they unrolled it. It was a large, detailed map of the new world that they were in. The fairy tale world was a wide continent bordered by mountain ranges and covered with forests with castles and palaces and villages scattered all around. The Northern Kingdom was the largest of the kingdoms, and it took up most of the map. The second largest was the Charming Kingdom, spread across the south, and the third was the Sleeping Kingdom, which stretched along the east. The dwarf forest covered the majority of the west. The tiny cornered kingdom was tucked away in the southwestern corner of the continent. In the northwest corner was the Elf Empire. It was between Charming Kingdom and Sleeping Kingdom. In between Charming Kingdom and Sleeping Kingdom was Fairy Kingdom, and just above that was Troll and Goblin Territory. The Fairy Kingdom looked beautiful, as it was very colorful and seemed to sparkle on the map. The Troll and Goblin Territory looked frightening and appeared to be surrounded by large boulders of rocks, preventing anything from going in or coming out. In the very center of all of it was Red Riding Hood Kingdom, circled by an unmistakable brick wall of gigantic proportions. Connor and Alex couldn't believe it. The world they had grown up hearing about was real. It was all real. It was bigger and better than they could have ever imagined. Alex couldn't help but get emotional. Tears began to flood her eyes. Together, all of the kingdoms create the happily ever after assembly, the frog explained. The happily ever after assembly? Connor asked with a slight touch of sarcasm in his voice. It is the organization formed to uphold the treaty of all the rulers signed so that all of the kingdoms can live in peace and prosperity, Froggy told them. Sounds like our United Nations, Alex whispered to Connor. All of the kingdoms have their own traditions and celebrated histories, Froggy went on. And there are kings and queens, I'm assuming? Connor asked. Oh, yes, Froggy said. The Northern Kingdom is ruled by Queen Snow White. The Corner Kingdom is watched over by Queen Rapunzel. The Sleeping Kingdom, formerly known as the Eastern Kingdom, but renamed after the dreadful curse which under it was placed, is governed by Queen Sleeping Beauty. And of course, the Charming Kingdom is ruled by King Charming and his wife, Queen Cinderella. Wait, are these all current monarchs? Alex asked with a spark of excitement in her eyes. You mean Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty? They're all still alive? Of course they are, Froggy said. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful, Alex said excitedly. Isn't that wonderful, Connor? Whatever, Connor mumbled. How old do you think they are? Froggy asked. Queen Snow White and King Charming, Froggy's voice. Queen Snow White and King Charming have only been married a few years. Queen Cinderella and King Charming are expecting their first child. Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Charming are sadly still trying to restore their kingdom to consciousness after the horrible sleeping spell it was placed under. Wait, Connor said. Are you saying that all of these queens are married to the same guy? Certainly not, Froggy said. There are 3 King Charmings. They're brothers. Of course, Alex said. Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty all married Prince Charming. There's more than one. How come I never thought about that? I never thought about it either, did you? But they do. All the princes in the real stories are named Prince Charming. Connor's eyes were fixated on the map. He kept searching for some kind of road or bridge that would lead them back home, but he found nothing. Oh my goodness. This is a long one. Why are there a bunch of rocks around the troll and goblin territory? Connor asked. As punishment, Froggy said. Trolls and goblins are nasty creatures and have a habit of kidnapping people and turning them into slaves. The Fairy Council forced the trolls and goblins into one territory, and none of them are allowed to leave without permission. Fairy Council? Alex asked. This word was almost too good to be true. Yes, they are a group of powerful fairies of the kingdom, Froggy explained. Cinderella's fairy godmother is one of them, and so is Mother Goose. And all of the fairies that blessed Sleeping Beauty when she was a baby, they are on it too. They rule the fairy kingdom, and they are the leaders of the happily ever after assembly. Is Red Riding Hood under some sort of punishment too? Connor asked. Why is there a wall built around it? Alex looked down at the map and back up at Froggy, equally curious. That was the result of CRAWL revolution, Froggy said. What was the Crawl Revolution? Connor asked. The citizens' riots against the wolf liberty, Froggy explained. The Red Riding Hood Kingdom used to be a group of villages in the Northern Kingdom that were considered under attack by wolves. They begged the evil queen, Snow White's stepmother, who was on the throne at the time, to help them, but the evil queen was too occupied with her vanity, so they revolted and started their own kingdom. They built a huge wall around it so no wolves could get in. And now Red Riding Hood is the queen? Alex asked. Yes. She was the only elected queen in its history, Froggy said. The villagers figured her story was the most symbolic of their struggle, so they chose her to lead them. But isn't she just a little girl? Alex asked. No, she is a young woman now. A very self-obsessed young woman, from what I hear. After all, she named the kingdom after herself. Her grandmother does most of the decision-making, while she takes all of the credit, Froggy said. Unfortunately, the CRAWL revolution only led to the rise of the Big Bad Wolf Pack. The Big Bad Wolf Pack? Connor asked. Yes. They are the descendants of the original Big Bad Wolf. They travel around terrorizing villages and attacking unsuspecting travelers, Froggy said. Oh, joy, Connor said sarcastically. I'm sorry I asked. But besides that, things are very peaceful throughout the kingdoms, Froggy said. His voice drifted off, and uncertainty grew on his face. That was until a week ago. The twins leaned forward. What happened a week ago? Alex asked. The evil queen escaped from the dungeons of Snow White's palace, Froggy told them. I thought everyone had heard. It's news to us, Connor said. That can't be good, Alex said. How'd she escape? No one knows, Froggy said. She just vanished, along with her magic mirror. Snow White's army has been searching throughout the kingdom for her. They pass through the woods at least twice a day. So far, they've found nothing, not even a footstep to lead them in her direction. Do you think they're going to find her? Connor asked. I hope so, Froggy said. She's a very dangerous woman. She's the only queen in history to ever lose her throne. I couldn't imagine the revenge she must be seeking. Who knows what she is planning to do next? Alex suddenly became very tense. It had just occurred to her that along with the characters that she had grown up loving, all the ones she hated and feared actually existed too. It made her feel very uneasy and very unsafe. The fire in the fireplace began to fade, and Froggy got up to add another log. The twins' eyes and mouths were wide open, and their heads were spinning from all of this new information. Exactly how far away do you live from here? Froggy asked as he sat back down across from them. The twins looked to each other, back at Froggy, and then back at each other. They didn't know what to tell him. Would he believe them if they told him the truth? It's practically a different world, Connor said. Alex shot him a dirty look, and then they nervously laughed, trying to make light of what her brother just said. Froggy wasn't laughing. He sat straight up in his seat, and his face grew very still with an intensity in his eyes, as if he had just found a solution to a mystery. Interesting, Froggy said, eyeing the twins back and forth. Because, if I didn't know better, just from the way you dress and the way that you speak, the way that you were so surprised at basic history, I would say that there was a very good chance that you are indeed from another world. They didn't understand what he was trying to say. Did he know something that they didn't? Just out of curiosity, have you ever heard of another world? Alex asked. Or preferably how to get back to it, Connor added. Froggy studied their faces even more intently for a moment. He got up again and went to the bookshelf on a far side of the room. He rustled through the books looking for something of special interest. Finally, he found it. A small leather-bound journal with a red band around it. Have either of you ever heard of the wishing spell? Froggy asked the twins. Alex and Connor shook their heads. Froggy flipped through the journal. I assumed not, he said. It is a legendary spell comprised of a list of items, and apparently, when you put the items together, you are granted one wish. It doesn't matter how extravagant the wish is. The wishing spell will grant it. Many people believe that it's only a myth, and I did too, until I found this journal. What does the journal have to do with anything? Connor asked. It was written by a man from the Charming Kingdom, Froggy said. He managed to discover what these items were and recorded his journey to find them. His one wish was to reunite with the woman he loved. And in the journal, he claimed she lived in another world. Alex and Connor sat straight up. They were sitting on the edge of their seats without realizing it. I thought the man writing the journal was crazy. I didn't believe another world could exist. Until I began finding your books, Alex. And then, when I saw you bickering in the forest, I knew you two were different, Froggy said. I knew you had to be from the place that man had written about. The twins were happy the truth was out, and Froggy seemed genuinely excited about the whole thing. Did he make it? Alex asked. Did the man cross over into the other world? He must have, Froggy said. The journal ends when he found the last item. Froggy handed the twins the journal and took a seat in his chair. Wherever you are from, if it's home that you wish to go back to, I think this is your best chance to follow the journal. The twins were silent for a moment, and they stared down at the journal in his hand with an immense hope. What items does the spell require? Alex asked. All sorts, from all over, Froggy told her. But the journal gives great instructions on where to find them. Some of them are very dangerous to get. Of course they are, Connor said. Typical. If the spell will grant whatever wish you want. What? Oh, sorry, wrong character. Blech. If the spell will grant whatever wish you want, why didn't you search for the items and wish to be human again? Alex asked Froggy. Froggy thought about it for a moment. It was a question he had asked himself many times and was ashamed of the answer. I have kept the journal all of these years in case I ever decide to, Froggy explained with difficulty. But searching for the items would mean that I would have to face the world looking like this. And frankly, children, that is something I am not ready to do. It's something I don't think I'll ever be able to do. He spoke from a place of deep sadness. Clearly he wasn't finished learning the witch's lesson yet. It is getting late, Froggy said. Why don't you sleep on it and decide what you want to do in the morning? You're welcome to stay here as long as you'd like. Thank you, Alex said. I hope we aren't a bother. No bother at all, Froggy said earnestly. Froggy got them a large blanket to share. He blew out the lamps and put the fire out in the fireplace. Alex and Connor tossed and turned with the thoughts of the wishing spell all night. But there was no decision to make. If the journal offered a possible way home, they would have to do anything and everything it instructed to them. They had no choice. They were about to embark on the greatest scavenger hunt of their lives. And that's the end of the chapter. The next one is going to be chapter 6, The Dwarf Forests. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys. Love you.